who wants to be first of all will be last of all and servant of all. Gentlemen, you are in the right place. This is Last in Line Leadership Podcast. I am your host, John Shibley, and I just read you from Mark 9:35. That scripture is all about servant leadership, and that's what we're about here. The podcast that showcases and highlights great leaders of faith, people who have walked the journey of leadership, who have served, who have sacrificed, who have developed discipline, courage, and resilience. You've come to the right place. This is Last in Line Leadership. Hey, I'd like to welcome Noel Fenderson, who is the owner of Dangerous But Good Movement. He was a SWAT officer. He's an entrepreneur now, still staying in contact and with a limited role as a SWAT officer, but mostly dedicating his ministry time to the Dangerous But Good Movement. And if you haven't heard about it, it's a great movement that's forged to inspire the love of God, family, and country and freedom. They're all about the Second Amendment, and they're all about Jesus, not necessarily in that order. They were forged upon the foundation of faith, of course, and family and freedom come right in after that. But it's really building up and strengthening families, importantly, men who lead those families, and empowering the freedom of all of us. And they remind the world that they have the ability, tools, and weapons to be categorized as dangerous, but to the core, we choose good. And the meekness that is power under voluntary control that Jesus represented is what this movement is all about. Pursuing the lion, not just the lamb, and locking arms with God's army, creating strong people who follow Jesus, but also defend the freedoms of this country and protect the people they love. So I love Noel's heart. I love the conversation we have, gets very deep, gets into some of his background with the SWAT teams, and really is encouraging because he just has that life about him that encourages and inspires people to be better, but can also be tough, along with tender. And Christians don't have to be flabby and weak. In fact, we're called to be the opposite. We're called to be rugged and righteous. And I believe that Dangerous But Good ministry encapsulates all of those good qualities. So without further ado, let me welcome Noel Fenderson to Last in Line Podcast. Noel Fenderson, welcome. Nice to meet you, first of all, but welcome to Last in Line Podcast, man.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you for having me. Love what you're doing.
Love it, man. I love seeing new stuff, and I may not be really that new, but it was new to me, and I came across. It's one thing about the algorithm on Instagram that I do like, is that it does present some folks to me that I never knew. And man, I'm glad we got to hook up, and we're recording this on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Both of us almost forgot about it. I mean, I had to like set an alarm, and thank God I did.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of a unique day to be recording a podcast. But man, I didn't really plan on this, but kind of, I don't know, give us a little bit of a reflection on 2023 in your personal life, like maybe in a couple of bullet points. And we didn't plan this, but
Yeah.
do you have some things that stood out to you in 2023 that you can comment on?
Yeah. Well, I love this time of year. I love looking back and just looking at what really went well and what didn't go well over the past year, and then planning ahead. And so, yeah, I've got some things that I've been thinking about. Really looking back, just I would say one word to describe it would be grateful. A lot of gratitude over the past year, with all things: work, ministry, my family. And so there's definitely a lot that I can improve on in 2024. But man, really grateful for just a great 2023. And I think 24 is going to be crazy. And I feel the birth pangs growing, as Scripture says. And so it is needed time for guys like you and all of your network to rise up to what is going to go down this next year. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like it. I always love the scripture. It might be my favorite, but it's hard to pick one. But like Isaiah 43:18 and 19 talks about, forget about the things of old, and kind of God talking about how, don't you see I'm doing something new? Like, I'm going to do something new. I'm going to provide a way in the wilderness, right? Rivers in the desert. I love that scripture. And so yeah, I think there's something new coming that we don't really know about yet, or maybe we feel something kind of percolating, but we just don't know the full manifestation of it. But I know that's what I love most about God, is he loves to surprise us. What would you say, again, didn't plan on this one, but I mean, did God exceed your expectations at all in 2023, and how so, if he did?
yeah, well, I think one of the biggest things and kind of what even led to our conversation right now is dangerous but good. We purchased the company this past year, so a massive life change and a really cool thing that really the Lord has been walking us in over the past few years, and it happened this year. So that is something that I would say is just a huge win for
Yeah.
2024, and a movement that I've been a part of for many years, but now just a different season. One's just excited to see where God's going to take it.
Well, good. I mean, maybe, and we'll get into the weeds on dangerous but good, and kind of how that came to
Yeah.
be, and how and what it's been about. But before we do that, I mean, I think it's important, even for me, since we've known each other about, what, 30 seconds. Maybe take us through a little bit about, maybe through your teen years, maybe young 20s, college, high school, some of those
Yeah.
impressionable years, and your faith journey. And then
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, it's just kind of some things you learned about leadership that you implement today.
Yeah. Well, like many of us, I come from a broken home. So my dad left when I was young. My mom has been married and divorced 5 times. So that's I kind of give that as some context of who I am, because it's a really big part of my story. And then fast forward, I really tried to go the way of the world, seeking all the things that the world had to offer. Uh, Sports, women, money, power, all the things, these worldly desires that we're supposed to fight against now. So man, you name it, I was involved in it. And thankfully, I had some good foundation, some good roots with my faith. And I always knew I wanted to follow Jesus, I would say, even from a young age. I just never knew how. And really, a lack of intentional discipleship, looking back, is the kind of the reason why I lacked that. I didn't have it modeled for me from a man, from a godly man, from a father, is where it should be done. And in the church, that did not happen. So, I would constantly have this tension of going the way of the world, coming back, going the way of the world, coming back. And really defining moment in my walk is when I started being discipled. And that changed my life, and really changed the trajectory of my life, is through a discipleship relationship. And God just put some lines in the faith in my life, and really modeled and trained me to become a disciple of Jesus, and realized that it was more of a relationship and a pursuit and a mission than it was just going to church and doing religion. So
Yeah.
uh, that is kind of a super quick
Yeah.
overview of my walk.
I mean, yeah, we could go a number of directions with some of that, for sure. Man, I wonder too, I'm curious if what your thought of masculinity was growing up, in a place where, you had no real model for that, and then how it evolved once you decided to follow Jesus, once you kind of saw what discipleship looked like. Can you take us through sort of what your worldly view of masculinity was and manhood, and then how it evolved, or how it, why it evolved?
Yeah. Well, always, I guess I'd always view it as, you know, manhood was this like tough
Hmm.
grit, good over evil, right over
Sure.
wrong. type mentality. But what was hard for me to see was to reconcile that with the church's version of it, or what I thought the church's version of it, which was this blue-eyed, sweet baby Jesus holding a little lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, how do you reconcile these two things? So that I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
that view of manhood was just I could never figure out, really the essence of who Jesus is and what it really meant to be an authentic man of God.
Yeah, and I've heard it said too from some guys that are in similar spaces who do podcasts and man stuff. Like I've heard them say, I can either be a man and be away from the church, or I can, I guess, be a Christian and be in the church. They never really saw those two as being, able to be one person, right? But we,
Yeah,
we all know Jesus was 100% lion, 100% lamb, so we can be both. And I think that's probably where you got the name Dangerous but Good. Like it parlays both of those, and it is rugged. Like we can be rugged and righteous, right? And
right,
we can be tough and tender, all those things. Jesus was all of those things. And
right,
but I agree. I think some of the paintings we've seen and depictions of Christ have been off, have been just flat out wrong. And he wasn't some fair skinned, you know, guy with, feathered hair wearing jams and kissing babies. No, I mean, he was a rugged dude. So I guess, you mentioned, and so your view of masculinity, biblical masculinity
mhm,
started to change, right? When you started being discipled and you saw, okay, these guys love Jesus, but they can also go cut a tree down or load a handgun, right? Like we're not bad people if we like those things.
right,
So what does servant leadership mean to you? Because this is really a servant leadership podcast and we talk a lot about
okay,
it. So
yeah.
what is your, if you have a definition, or what are your thoughts on servant leadership?
Yeah, man, I just kind of boil that down to doing what's best for the team. Not taking the posture of, hey, this is my thing or this is my operation or my team, but servant leadership is saying, hey, what is best for the entire unit, the entire family of people? And then whatever I have to do to help out the entire team typically means you're getting in a position to serve, obviously, hence the name servant leadership. So you are serving the team so how they can best grow and perform. So that would be probably my
Yeah.
best off the cuff definition.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, on the spot, hot seat, that you signed up for it and you did well.
Yep.
So
Oh
you
yeah.
did good. And I think sometimes people, where we get into muddy water with that terminology of servant leadership, and it might just be semantics, but I think some guys think, you hear tip of the spear. Like, I am the tip of the spear. That's the type of leadership we want, is guys out front, right? Leading the charge. And absolutely we do. Like, I think sometimes there's a dichotomy and you can't really be a servant leader and be tip of the spear. Well, I think the circumstance kind of defines where that role kind of evolves, right? Like, so
Right.
I'm the tip of the spear when it comes to standing between danger and the people I lead, right? Like, yes,
Yeah.
I'm the tip of the, but when it becomes, whenever I'm the servant leader, is putting them between me and really their potential. So I think
Right.
we nudge them into their greatness as servant
Right.
leaders. I think we help them get better. And then we can be the tip of the spear when it comes to protection and, presiding over and having dominion over the things we're stewarding.
Right.
So I just threw that in. I just think sometimes that's why I asked you what you thought of servant leadership, because sometimes people think that might be a weaker form of leadership. And I would argue the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
all right, we do a fun
Good.
thing. We do a fun thing at the beginning, and then we'll go into your kind of your days as in the SWAT teams, currently volunteering still, or what, I don't know what you call it. You're in the reserve SWAT,
Right.
kind
Right.
of a unique role. And but before we do that, we do something called life sentence. So
Life's
I'm going to give you a life sentence here. Yeah, you don't even know what you're guilty of, but you're going to no, it's a life sentence. You're going to complete the sentence. So I come up with these
okay.
sentences, and I want you to. This is you talking, and I want you to fill in the sentence kind of from your perspective and your life experience. So here we go.
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right, man. This is you talking. So here we go. A valuable life lesson I learned the hard way. was?
Man, not following Jesus, not giving him my entire surrender in my entire life. Uh, we we have a culture where we can follow Jesus and maintain the same lifestyle that we once had, and that is just not the case. There
Mm,
is a requirement of crucifying our old self, and it's a daily experience. But there's an exchange. There's one life for another,
mm,
and Jesus gave us His life for in exchange for ours. So I think that that just caused a lot of tension, having one foot in and one foot out. And man, it wasn't until I saw that and realized that it really changed everything. So that's a lesson that I used to beg guys to follow Jesus, and now I find myself almost talking them out of it and saying, "Hey, man, I don't know if you can handle this. It's easy. It's easy not to. It's easy to live in the world, but if a real man living for Christ is not something that is an easy road." So,
mm.
uh,
That's
yeah,
that's a unique perspective on approach to evangelism. I like that. Kind of that reverse psychology. I don't think you're man enough for this.
yeah,
I don't think you're man enough to follow Jesus. And they're like, oh, really? I'll show you, and there you go. They're following Jesus. All right. That was a pretty easy one. So you did good. All right. We got a couple more here. Um, my advice to an aspiring entrepreneur starting a new business is,
be prepared. Be prepared to fail
hmm,
and learn from your failures. So, entrepreneurship is not all you just wake up and all of a sudden you're a millionaire. It's not how it works. There's a lot of trials. There's a lot of broken relationships. There's a lot of hard times that come from it. So that's what I would say about that.
that's good. I have a part B to that. I guess I'll just ask, what was kind of key about your personality or maybe your outlook that got you to the other side of some of those challenges or some of that failure or some of that, I don't know, some of the hardship when you started as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say two things. One, you got to have your why. If you have your why clearly defined, you can push through and get through anything if your purpose is big enough.
Hmm.
And then the mentality that you see on, military units or special forces teams, SWAT teams, like you mentioned. I'm on the SWAT team, and in the police world, you have to have the mentality that you are never going to quit. And so it is about the bigger picture. It's about the mission. It's about the team. And if you make it about you'll compromise for yourself. So you got to have something bigger than that, a bigger purpose.
That's excellent. I love that. I love that answer. Yeah, because that's for somebody. I think a lot of people see and they get into this comparison trap and they're like, I could start a business. He can do it. I can do it. And then they're not really, the expectation is a little bit skewed. And then they first
Yeah.
sign of adversity, man, they're like, "Oh, okay, this isn't what I thought." So yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. All right, how about um as a SWAT team officer that you currently are, and maybe we're more entrenched in that role in the past than you are now, but let's just so as that role, I
Mhm.
learned a lot about myself in.
In adversity, in the hardest, toughest of times where you can rely on nothing but the your brothers to your left and to your right in your training. So no, it's the famous saying, nobody rises to the occasion. You always fall
Mhm.
to the level of your training. So man, that taught me so much. Just the importance of training when the times are right, and preparing yourself when the conditions are right. So when they're not right, you're prepared. So that works in your family and ministry and your job, all areas of life. That kind of applies to everything.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder in ministry, I think about like give us a picture of what someone can expect as far as adversity goes when it comes to ministry. Because I think we think ministry and we're thinking, oh, okay, yeah, this is a fluffy, this is a happy kind of, just rosy rainbow environment. We're all just kind of happy and loving Jesus and drinking coffee. Like, have you had any challenges in ministry that, like, what challenges do you see most, like that you see maybe even that people don't handle right? Like what can you give advice about that kind of thing?
Man, I think it would always come down to the thing Jesus prayed for in John 17. What he wants is the unity, and I think that's the biggest thing that the enemy attacks is unity. So within that realm would be all the love one another's. The relational side of ministry is always the hardest if you really are trying to love people well. And they're, if you're opening up your heart and and loving people, then you are giving, and you're being vulnerable, and you're open to get hurt. And so all the pain and suffering and heartache and loss, it comes through relationships and
Hmm.
people. So that's definitely the
That's good.
that's what the enemy wants. He
Uh,
hates unity of the body.
yeah, he does. Definitely wants to drive a wedge in pretty much every relationship.
Yeah,
Um, all right, how about this? Because I know you're a dad. Now tell me how many you've got, four kids, right?
that's
Tell me
right.
their
Four.
ages.
Yeah, so they're all switching from odd to even, but right now they're 10, 8, 6, and 4. And my 6-year-old just turned 7. So I've got my 7, I'm sorry, my 8-year-old's about to turn 9 on Friday. So I'm in the midst of having to reframe how I say their ages.
That's good. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're just kind of, I hate to say getting started, but as a parent, but yeah, I've got my youngest is 15, my oldest is 25. So you
Yeah.
got a, you're right in the middle of it. That's cool. Enjoy it because it flies by, as I'm sure you know that your 10-year-old was just one not too long ago,
Yeah.
about 5 minutes ago. Um,
Yep.
okay. So then let's do this one, this last one on the life sentence. I'm a better father today because I blank.
Oh man, I'm a better father today. I mean, I always tie all these answers biblical, back
Sure.
to follow Jesus. I am a better father because I follow Jesus. I mean, simple as that. He's the model. He's the ultimate how and why and where it all comes from. So
Yeah.
my love for him increases, and my love for my family and my children increase. So
Yeah.
absolutely, I always tie it back to that.
Well, that's yeah, and we should. But so let's boil it down a little bit, couple more layers for guys that are listening to that and they're like, okay, yeah. I mean, conceptually, sure, I follow
Yeah,
Jesus and that makes me a better dad than if I didn't. But so tactically, from a pragmatic standpoint, what are you doing? Let's say, what did you do in 23 as a father, 2023, that maybe you didn't do in years prior, like that made you kind of go to another level as a father in your mind?
yeah. Man, I really tried to, as this unique season they're in right now, really felt like I needed to spend more quality time with them.
Mm,
So, especially having 4, it's tough to do. So, trying to be intentional about once a month, taking one of them on a special time with just one on one with dad. And man, that's where the sweet conversations come. That's where they share their heart. That's where you can point them to Jesus.
yeah.
And a lot of times, to your point, making it practical, we think like, all right, I got to sit down and have this like regimen Bible study. And man, those things are good. They
Hmm.
often end in chaos, and they're
Hmm.
hard, especially when they're my age. But man, the true discipleship lessons, they are more caught than taught. So it's more life on life, and just the routine of life and being with them. That's how you really pour it into them.
Yeah. I mean, that's good because I wish I'd have learned a little bit of that earlier on, right? Just kind of sitting and being present and
Yeah,
talking about what they like or doing the things they like instead of sort of always trying to be in training mode or
yeah,
dad mode, just being kind of let's chill. Let's have it.
yeah.
Let's just chill. And then you work in biblical truth into
Right,
their world, right? You don't drag them into your biblical truth world. So you want it to
right.
stick and land in a good place. But no, I like that. All
Yeah.
right. Well, you passed the life sentence. You
Hey,
did
those are
well.
fun, man. Those are good.
Yeah, yeah, we like those. So now the audience kind of gets an idea, right? They kind of get to
Yeah,
know Noel Fenderson a little bit better. So I guess as a reserve SWAT guy, maybe not your day to day isn't as entrenched, right? But what do you
yeah.
miss most about kind of that? run and gun 24/7 kind of constant SWAT mindset? Like, do you miss anything, or what do you miss?
Well, I'm really grateful to still be pretty involved.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm really thankful for that. But overall, if I could still probably boil it down to just the team mentality, being entrenched in that every single moment of every single day, where nothing else matters but the team. And
Mm.
so that's probably that is what I strive for in discipleship groups and our church and things like that. Uh, sometimes it's sad. There's more bond and brotherhood on a team like that than there is in your own church or discipleship
Mhm.
group. So the
Yeah.
closeness that comes from that is what I miss the most. But again,
Yeah.
I still get to be in it, so really thankful for that.
Yeah, it seems, I don't know, it seems like we should be a little more molded in that direction as Christian brothers, right? And discipleship group, we should be. But I mean, when you're with guys that your life depends on them and vice versa, like it's that just kind of is the glue sometimes, and it forges like a better bond than, guys sitting around talking about eternity or how we can live better and love Jesus more. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, I think that that's just a reality. But yeah, I want to get your take on discipleship a little later for sure, because I think
yeah,
that's where we do miss it some in the church,
yeah. Oh,
digging into stuff like that. But so you kind of raised the bar here. You kind of set it high when you put on your website that you've developed some multi-million dollar businesses. I mean, you're a successful entrepreneur. I mean, okay, we got to get the secret to your success here, right, Noel? Because there's guys out there that from afar they're like, man, how did he do that? Or what did he, what's his? So what is by trade? Like, what is your these entrepreneurial kind of ventures that you've done? Like, take us through those and maybe like how where they were born, how they were born, how you sort of navigated as a SWAT guy and an entrepreneur. Like, how do you do both?
yeah. I keep saying this word. I feel like so much during our time so far, but if I could say one thing, it'd just be the team.
Yeah.
Surrounding myself with people that are way smarter than me, and that's the secret sauce to any business, is having the right people involved.
Mhm.
So a lot of the companies that I've been a part of have been home service based companies. So having key people in operational roles in those businesses are super important. So having the different roles of a visionary, a strategic guy, and then an operational guy. Those are the three key roles that you got to have with any business. And so for my aspect, I kind of coming from law enforcement. You deal with people all the time, so I'm the people guy. I love people. I love helping. I love serving. I love giving back. So really, that's the heartbeat behind myself, and just finding a right team. And it's not easy. It comes through a lot of heartache and going through the wrong people. But that would be the one thing I would say is the most important critical element for any business,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, sounds like you did obviously have the vision gift, and you kind of see something that could develop, and then where your weaknesses are and the gaps you got to fill with your skill set, and then you hire around that and build that balance, which I would think if I interviewed 10 CEOs, I would hope they would all say the same or something similar, right? It's not all about,
Yeah,
oh, we're doing this because I'm gifted at these areas and I
yeah,
handle everything. So you've also got some nonprofits, I think, that
yeah,
you mentioned. So talk about some of that too.
yeah, absolutely. And that would go back to the why, the
Yeah.
purpose behind what we do. For me, that is the passion behind everything we do. It's the passion behind our brand. And so we have two. One is a local nonprofit that we in Memphis, in the greater Memphis area. There are 100,000 plus kids that are living in extreme poverty and extreme conditions that I believe if everybody personally knew them and saw it, they would radically change their life to help them.
Mhm.
The problem is there's a disconnect. Most people know them as more of a statistic. Poverty is just a number. They don't really know anybody. So it's easier to kind of put your head in the sand and turn a blind eye to it. But once you know them, everything changes. So locally, we really are walking alongside the orphans, the widows, the fatherless, and helping them. And then we have one that is global, where we are walking alongside pastors and disciples all over the world. We primarily focus in the 1040 window, the least reach, the least evangelized people in the world. And we are training and equipping church planning and discipleship through those ministries. So that's why I do what I do. I love that. That's what bigger purpose is there than the commandment from the King? So that is those are my favorite things. I could talk about those for hours.
That's good. No, I'm glad you mentioned that because yeah, I mean, having the heart for your backyard like that and also doing something global, I think is key because sometimes we do get so locked into tunnel vision of, world missionary and those kinds of things. And there is a need and a hurting world out there, but sometimes it's across the street. And so, yeah, I have a big heart for trying to just let's stop the hemorrhage in our own country, right? I mean, because there's a lot of need here. And it sounds like you're doing both, which that's ideal. That's a win-win. And dangerous but good. You mentioned you bought the brand, but you've been
Mhm.
a part of it for a while. Like, so
Yeah.
tell me about that. Because in my head, I'm thinking you thought of this idea, you just kind of came up with dangerous but good, and then you started this movement and got a bunch of guys fired up about it. So, tell me about how it originated and then how it's evolved.
Yeah. So obviously, it's really big in the 2A military law enforcement community. And being on a SWAT team, I got introduced to it and I was like, man, I just fell in love with it. It just, the name, the purpose, it really resonated. And going back to what we talked about earlier, reconciling, like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you possess the skills for violence and to be dangerous, but you're inherently, you choose to be good. So, as a police officer, a lot of police officers and military guys struggle with that, with
Mm-hmm.
all the people that they see and have to be a part of, stopping sometimes. So that's how I got introduced to it. I fell in love with it, became a customer, and then I became an ambassador. So your typical social media ambassador influencer, where you got a code and all
Mm-hmm.
that. I just loved it, and I loved what it stood for. I loved the fight for what matters most, the fight for
Mm-hmm.
faith, family, and freedom, and that you're inviting people into that
Yeah.
and to stand on those values and what we were founded on as a country. So, long story short, the Lord just kept opening up doors, and the opportunity came for us to take it over this past year. So that's kind of the story behind it.
Wow. That's cool. I mean, that whole concept obviously extends beyond just the military and law enforcement community because I would say we need Christian, just your average ordinary Joe like me, Christian guy, uh, tr trying to implement that concept. Like we need to know that it's okay, like to be tough.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be a pushover. It's okay to stand up for something that's right, in public, or it's okay to go fire a gun, right? And so uh we definitely struggle with that dichotomy as a society. Personally, I think we as people, Christian men, just regular dudes, think that there's this dichotomy of we got to be, we can either be tough or we can be, you know, a soft Christian guy. And so I have a question for you. Um, which is worse in your opinion? Like a non-believer that's out there kind of counterproductive in culture with kind of those evil motives that we see out there on social media, just kind of resisting everything that we stand for as Christians, or the flabby, flaccid, passive, apathetic Christian guy? Like, which is worse in your opinion? And maybe give me some context around an answer.
Yeah, definitely the second one. The first one has an excuse, you know. The second one is, you know, really, I probably would be more frustrated in the past, right? You know, now I'm probably in a season where I'm more heartbroken
Yeah.
over that, because they just don't. Again, going back to the joke about trying to talk people out of following Jesus. Obviously, I'm probably one of the most evangelistic people out there. But what I mean by that is, man, we're inviting somebody into something that they have no idea what they're being invited into.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got people that have walked an aisle and checked a box and said a prayer, and they have not surrendered to Jesus. But even, you know, the people that have, uh, still being empathetic of, man, they just haven't been trained. They
Mm-hmm.
have not been modeled of what it means and the mission that they have been a part of and that they're invited into. So really, you know, they're on the sideline, and they're not a part of the true mission. And Jesus, he wants so much more for them. So if that's you, Jesus is saying, hey, man, I want more for your life. I want you to follow me and not just sing about it or
Mm-hmm.
say it, but I really want you to live it out. And so, you know, that second group that you said, man, it makes us all look bad. And so I don't want somebody claiming the name of Jesus and not acting the way he did. That doesn't flow very well.
Yeah.
So definitely more frustrating.
Yeah, and I think, and we've got pastors, pretty prominent ones in big mega churches that are either, I wouldn't say deconstructing, but their faith, but I would say they're really marginalizing the gospel. And then a lot of them are just kind of standing in the middle and trying to win both crowds and say the right things, right? And compromising what's right and what's true. And
Yeah.
and there's groups of people out there that in the social world that absolutely resist Christ, that absolutely, I would even say, are demonically evil in their intentions when they start bringing it into schools and children
Yeah.
and forcing children in those things. And we've got pastors that are sort of being permissive and being like, oh, we can love them too. It's not their fault. One of those things, and I'm not going to get off on that. But to your point, it's not great for the Christian, for the capital C church. It's
Yeah.
not great when that's going on because you got guys like you and I that are going, no, 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 no. This is true. There's not a your truth, my truth. There's a capital T truth, right? And it's biblical, and that's the truth we operate and stand on. And so I wonder, how do you foresee, or how is it happening now? How does the dangerous but good movement moving the needle with some of that stuff that maybe is out there, even on a small scale? Like, what are you guys doing? What are you saying to groups that trying to get guys off the bench, I guess?
Yeah. So what I see is dangerous but good on, man, we're really attracting those guys that are, they want more than just what they see, what they've experienced in the normal Christian world. So it's attracting a different type of man and woman. So there's lots of women involved too, but you know, it's not for a passive person.
Yeah.
So there's a different level that they're being invited into in a community that, man, we're all just dudes trying to love our family well, and we hate evil and we want to stop it and we want
Mm,
to stand for what matters most. So really, it's just enlightening, you know, men and women with a bigger purpose and a bigger picture, and a mission for that. So you know, it is saying, hey, get off the sideline and let's get in the game. And there's a fight, and we're saying, hey, John, you can join the fight and you can be a part of it. As a matter of fact, you're in the war, whether you realize it or not.
yeah.
We're all in a war, and we're inviting you into that story. And it's a great story, and it's an amazing mission to be a part of. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what we hope to do. So we're casting that net, and we're blessed to have an amazing community of people that are like-minded and think
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. No, and I got news for everybody. We win in the end. So we win. Believers win. And so that's a great segue into something that I didn't really have written in my outline, but I've just over 2023, I've had spiritual warfare as a big initiative on
Mm.
in just kind of on my mind. Wrote a book about it. It's like a
Wow. Yeah.
simple workbook, handbook for guys really to tactically engage in that war daily. And you mentioned we're at war. Yes, we're at
Yeah.
war with things we can see, evil right in front of our face, but we're also at a war in a supernatural realm. If you read
Yeah.
enough of the Bible, you know there's an enemy that in a spiritual realm that we can't see that is engaging in war
Yeah.
against us, whether we fight back or not, right? It's happening. So it's
Yeah.
good to know that guys understand that, number one, understand who the enemy is and what he's about, and then understand what God's given us to fight and actually win. And we do win. That's the point.
Yeah.
But we've got to fight. And so do you have any take on spiritual warfare and just kind of how you throughout your day or in the beginning of the day, how you sort of get the armor and
Mhm.
enlist the armor that God talks about?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is the first knowing that you're in a war. Man, how many people do we talk to that they don't even realize they're in a war? And things are different once you know you're in war.
Mm,
You're everything's different. You're on high
mhm,
alert. You're ready. You know there's an enemy. You're studying the tactics of the enemy, and it pushes you into training and the word and the ultimate
mhm,
weapon and the famous Ephesians where we're putting on the helmet of salvation, the belt of truth, and this visual picture. I can just see Paul, man, looking at a soldier and just looking at all the pieces of armor and just like saying, "Hey, like let me explain this,"
mhm.
and just realizing like the we have a weapon to fight against it, and that's the word, and that is
Yep.
being in a relationship with Jesus, and that is our offensive weapon. And the armor, there is no armor in the back, so we don't retreat.
Yeah.
We fight, and man, that's just a beautiful picture, and that's something that men and women want to be a part of. That sign me up for that. Like I want to fight for that. I don't want to just
Mhm.
hang out. I want to be a part of it. So man, I think that's, going back to answer your question, I think the biggest thing is the realization that we're in a war, and then to know the enemy, study the enemy, and then to know how to fight them, and
Yeah.
what to do and how to fight them, and then going
Yeah.
back to our faith and our spiritual disciplines within that.
Yeah. Well, I like that you said that because it leads me to a question, kind of get personal in your life and you can go as deeper, as you want, but do you have anything, obviously in business, you mentioned there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of setbacks, there's some, I don't know, it can feel like a grease fire at times, but take me through something maybe this year that happened that maybe you did sit back and go, this is spiritual warfare. This is like an attack on my spirit. Like this is something obviously that's in that realm, right? And I don't know how we can really quantify it for listeners, but you have anything that you attributed to that where you just had to like hunker down, get in the word, get in prayer, talk to some fellow believers, like some godly counsel. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah. I in 2023, I wouldn't say specifically there's anything massive like that I would
Yeah.
say, oh, something really bad or something like that happened. I would just say that, man, it's a realization and a theme that is constantly at the forefront of my mind. I think that if you are living out uh, the process of discipleship and denying yourself and following Jesus, there's a realization of that spiritual war that's always happening.
Mm,
And so there's this constant need to be with the Lord, to be quiet, to be still, to be in solitude, to pray. I just feel like that's, and again, if I say, John, hey, you get ready. Like the enemy doesn't care about somebody that just goes and sits in a pew and listens to a sermon.
yeah.
He could care less about that. But if you're going to sign up and you're going to go to battle, well, you've got a bullseye on your back. You are a target and you are in war. So, man, I feel like I feel like the greatest war probably and the spiritual conflict would be the comfort and complacency that we have to
Hmm.
fight, and the spiritual laziness. And man, that's what I have to fight. I got to fight that, fight the worldly desires of being comfortable.
Hmm.
And so that's probably the biggest constant fight that's happening in my life, in my mind.
That's good. I'm glad you said that, man. I was about ready to say, those guys sitting in the pew that are just kind of checking that box on Sunday. I mean, when they're getting lulled to sleep by some of their passivity, that's the first trigger. Like that's the first clue that you're under this sort of hypnosis by the enemy, right? You're just kind of,
Yeah,
if he can get you feeling busy, distracted, or bored, right? If he
yeah,
can get any of those things, man, he's winning that because you're being
yeah,
less productive for the kingdom. And
yeah,
so, if we're like you said, he likes to divide, right? He doesn't like unity, and so if we can keep our game edgy, like we can stay on the sharpened edge of our spiritual game, we can get a lot more people attracted to that, and then that doesn't like he doesn't like that. But again, like you said, be ready because once you start doing that and moving the ball down the court, here he comes, right? A
yeah,
bigger level, bigger devil, right? Like here he comes. And so,
yeah.
all right, man. Well, I know you're battling some voice and cold allergy stuff. And so I want to be respectful of your New Year's so you can get her started at, 4 o'clock or so Central Time. But I got maybe give a message to dads that are training young men right now. How many sons do you have?
So I have two. I have two boys and two
Two boys,
girls.
two girls.
Yeah,
Okay. So specifically for young men, I've got three
yeah.
boys and a daughter who I think sometimes I train her like she's a boy, but and she, having three older brothers, she's pretty tough.
Oh
But
yeah,
so dads that are training young men to be dangerous but good.
yeah,
And some guy, kids, depending on the season of life, can get that conceptually. They can retain that. But why is it necessary? And maybe give guys an idea of how to best convey that message to their sons.
yeah. Well, first it starts with you. You have to be that way yourself. You're not going to be able to model that to your boys. So uh, first, I would say look in the mirror, and are you that man? And if you're not, then you need to become that man,
Mm-hmm.
or you find somebody to train you to become that man.
Mm-hmm.
And that man, that's following Jesus. That is pursuing Jesus with your whole heart. And so being that person, modeling it again, I go back to what we talked about earlier. Just it's not taught, it's caught. And we're to share our entire life in the gospel with our kids, and we're training them. One day they're probably going to have to face evil, so realizing like this, we're not playing games with our faith. This is not some game we're playing. This is real. And they're going to face a real enemy in a real world. And not to mention, like, I want my boys to be men that they're going to be able to protect their future wife, and they're going to protect people that can't protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So there's honor, there's a lot of noble things that come alongside that you got to teach them. And again, it's not in these big things and these big lessons, and it's just your day-to-day rhythms of life where you're teaching them what that means. So we're always training, we're always
Yeah.
talking about it, we're always sharing it, and that is just our entire life. So it's way better to your own sons because you literally have your entire life with them.
Yeah.
uh it's harder to do that with men you're discipling, but within your own home, that's where it starts. So
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think our kids need to see us struggle a little bit too. I think they
yeah,
need to see adversity, that we actually do deal with it. And it's not just them and we're trying to tell them how to live because we just, we're parents and by title we're leading. We actually experience trouble, we experience failure, we experience hardship. So, I mean, I think our kids learn a lot by seeing us. And of course, you don't divulge every detail, every gory detail to your kids. And there's a time and a place for things, but I mean, I think they need to see, hey, it's a little tight this month financially, right? We had an air conditioner go out. Like, we're not going to the mall today. Sorry, we're over here counting our emergency fund because we need to put some money aside just in case. Like, they need to see us understand discipline and stewardship and those kinds of things. And they need to see when we're struggling and what we're doing, because literally, I think life is won in the trenches where we know what to actually do and execute a plan during the hard times. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing during those times, right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
God says, Jesus, they're going to have trial. You're going to have tribulation. You're going to have problems. He doesn't
Yeah.
just say you might, he says you will. So we need
Yeah.
to know kind of what to do in those situations before they happen. And then our kids need to see us executing that plan so that they can, like you said, it's caught and it's not just us telling them.
Yeah.
So, man, I appreciate you so much coming on today. Again, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas to you and your family. It's
Yeah,
good to
man.
get to know you, man.
Yeah.
You talk about ambassadors and you talk about, doing things, how people can get involved with Dangerous but Good. Give guys an idea before we let you go, kind of where to
Yeah.
find you. What can they do sort of step by step, like to become an ambassador, to get more involved with your movement?
Yeah. So the typical social media world, Instagram and Facebook, dangerous but good. That you follow, keep up with the content. You can subscribe to our email list, and then obviously we want you involved. We want you to wear your values. So it's not just wearing a shirt. Like, everything's intentional. So be intentional about what you wear, and just ask yourself, what is what you wear, what does that say about your values? And
Mm-hmm.
man, you talk about being a gospel witness with clothing, and apparel and patches and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. I have so many conversations that I get to share about God through that. So that's it. We have a Facebook group. It's a closed group. It's a community of men and women that encourage each other and spur one another on as well. So those would be the main ways. And man, join the fight. We just want men and women that are saying, hey, we want to be a part of this, and we want to surround ourselves with people that live for faith and family and freedom.
Yeah, I was gonna say earlier, that shirt, that sweatshirt, I dig that. That's a great. I love that for the logo, the hoodie. I'm gonna have to go on and get one of those. So we got to put the link in the notes for everybody to go get. All right, man. Well, audience, he has been Noel Fenderson. We've been last in line. Be blessed.